Hi, I'm Level Mike, and this is my opinion. So, let's talk about the newest Phoenix Wright game, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice. Newest game in the series, sixth game in the series. We've had many of these games already, although not all of them have come stateside, unfortunately. But at the very least, all the main games have in the series, which is nice. And this game, unlike any of the others, I think is the entire package is very mixed in terms of what's good and what's bad. Whereas most of the other games, they have specific things that are good, or like the characters, or the story, or things that are bad, like the cases, that kind of thing. And there's always at least, every game always has some faults somewhere. This game just has some good stuff and some bad stuff for pretty much everything. I do think the story itself is really good. It's a bit fast paced at the very end. They do expect you to take a lot, and I do think that considering how long the fifth case is, they could have done a better job pacing it out a little bit more in terms of like the reveals and stuff like that. But overall, really well done story. The characters are really mixed. You have returning characters like a Phoenix Wright, Apollo, Athena as well. But in terms of character development, there's hardly any development for Phoenix or Athena, and it's pretty much all Apollo. And considering this was the game they're finally bringing back Maya from the first three games, I was really surprised that pretty much she's just used as a plot device and not much else. And in all the cases, she has her little part to play, but she doesn't really get any development. She's completed her training, and that's it. Nothing else has really happened with her story or her character in the 10 years or whatever it's been between the third game and the sixth game. So that was a bit disappointing, and it was nice to get her like in the games again, but I just expected them to do a little bit more. But I guess, considering that the game is essentially like, this should be called Apollo Justice 2 in almost every way. Like the fifth case probably is longer than several of the cases combined, if not all of them. And it is entirely Apollo's story at that point. And it's into his backstory and everything else. And it's really interesting, and it's really well done. And the big twist that they have in Case 5 is huge, and probably one of the best twists they've done ever in any of the games. And probably the best case they've done in a long time. Probably the best case they've done since the final case of the third game. So that said, characters can be mixed in terms of the ones that are returning, but also the new characters. Like you have the new prosecutor, Nayuda, just not really well developed. He's not that interesting of a character. His motivations are eventually clear, but they also don't entirely feel right. It feels like they could have altered the story somewhat, and it would have worked out much better for his motivations instead of what they went with, which just felt kind of shallow. And the other character, which they did a really good job with, was Raffa, who is this priestess who essentially has this ability to communicate with the dead, but in a different way than Maya can, besides spirit channeling. She has this divination seance thing, and essentially what it does is show the final moments of the victim. So that's interesting how they take that, and how she starts off as this very stuck up, I'm always right because I can see these visions kind of attitude with her, and eventually really do develop her well, and she is very much a different person by the end of the game, and you do ultimately feel for her because she is a kid within all this, not young like Pearl, where she's like 14 or something, but definitely much better use of a younger character, I think, than the games have previously had. Besides that, the cases themselves, I think, are probably the biggest mixed bag. I've already talked about Case 5 being really good. The first case is pretty good considering all the things they have to introduce to you, but I definitely felt like by this point, like the sixth game in the series, they need to stop making it so obvious who the actual killer ends up being, because that's probably the biggest crime this game has, is that it's super obvious who every single killer is. The first case is super obvious. The second case is like they don't directly state it or anything, but if you don't figure out in the first 10 seconds of seeing the character on screen, you just need to play more of these games. The third case was probably the one where they actually did it really well, and definitely was the best use of everything that they've done in these games so far, and I would like to see more cases like that, where the mystery isn't as obvious as it first seems. The Force case is probably the worst. It's Athena's case, and it feels like a case one of another game. Like it feels like it should have been the case one of this game or something like that, or at least it's just a trial. It's not any kind of investigation, so it felt really lackluster. It just did not fit like the narrative of everything else that was going on. And while it does have some nice moments between Athena and Blackwell, it's just not that good of a case. There are some good characters in it, but without an investigation and with basically giving Athena no real character development and kind of putting some of her character development back from the first game, it just didn't go as well as I wanted it to. When it comes to the fifth case, though, they knocked it out of the park. Probably, like I said, the best fifth case they've done in a long time. It's kind of split up into two parts, too, and I think the first part of that probably could have been its own chapter and just have a really long chapter 4 and 5 and maybe develop both chapters a little bit more, or cases, I should say. I keep calling them chapters for some reason. And develop like the investigation stuff for each case a little bit more, give each case like 2 days to investigate or something like that. It would be a little bit more interesting if they at least didn't try to cram it all in one case and then leave a few things out, especially at the end. But overall, it's a great game. I really enjoyed it. It's just mixed on terms of how certain things play out within the story, within the characters and the cases and everything. If you're a fan of the series, you've probably already bought it, but if you haven't, it's definitely worth playing. And if you haven't played the games before, this isn't really the right game to jump into. I would check out the Ace Attorney Trilogy on iOS, which is just the first 3 games, or I think it's on 3DS eShop as well. Definitely worth playing, or if you have an original DS, then the first 4 games are on there. Definitely worth playing, and I really look forward to what they do next. I just hope that they bring back characters like Maya again and actually develop her correctly this time. And I'd also like to see Gumshoe brought back and developed as well. They do mention at one point, like during one of the things that you can talk to Edworth about at one point in one of the cases, he does mention Gumshoe is still working for the police, so it's not like he got fired or anything like a lot of speculation was about. So that's a thing. Anyway, I'm Novel Mike. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.